Greetings, I am D, and happy Halloween. Halloween, it's my most favorite holiday of the year. Although that may be a misnomer, as that would imply there are other great holidays. But there aren't. Christmas isn't, neither is Valentine's Day, not even my own birthday. And what better way to celebrate Halloween but by talking about, well, Halloween. In the year 1978, a man named John Carpenter, along with his partner in crime Deborah Hill, released a movie about this great time of the year, which was about a man who escapes from an insane asylum and starts terrorizing his hometown. It had little to no gore effects, but as is a staple with Carpenter's movies, it's all about the atmosphere more than the blood and gore. Which is something they forgot to tell Rob Zombie. Anyway, a movie this popular spawned its own tie-in media, including a novelization. Now the thing about filmmaking is that, well, it's not easy. Sometimes you either don't have the means or the time to shoot everything, and even the scenes you have shot are often omitted from the movie, or else the final product would be too long. Which has the unfortunate result that there are bits of information missing from the movie, and so we don't get the full story. And that's where the novelization comes in, to give us the information that, for whatever reason, didn't make it into the movie. The horror started on the eve of Samhain in a foggy vale in Northern Ireland at the dawn of the Celtic race. Literally 3 lines in, and I already know this will hurt. Deirdre was the third and youngest daughter of the Druid king Gwendol. Her hair was sandy brown with amber highlights, her eyes sea green, her complexion cream and wild roses. His name was Enda. He was 15, and he loved Deirdre with a passion that tortured him. "Who, Deirdre marry you?" his father cackled. "With your shriveled arm, your twitched mouth?" And we can all guess where this is going. Some guy loves some woman, but she doesn't love him back, so he ends up not only killing her, but killing her lover as well. Now, since this was written in the late 1970s, I can forgive its predictability, but what's that got to do with John Carpenter's movie? The king asked his shaman to pronounce a special curse for the remains of this vile murderer. "Thou shalt roam the earth till the end of time, reliving thy foul deed and thy foul punishment, and may the god Muk-Allah visit every affliction upon thy spirit furthermore." So one guy did something so horrible, he's cursed to do it forever, and, as you no doubt have figured out, will possess Michael Myers to kill others. As such, isn't putting a curse on him counterproductive? Why put a curse on him that'll have him in some shape or form live forever so he can continue his evil? And even if we set aside this little fact, did anyone really miss that from the movie? Is it really necessary to introduce the idea that Myers is not responsible for his own actions? Did he really need outside influence? Now we know who we have to thank for the oh-so-wonderful Thorn trilogy. And that's not a joke. The producers must have read this book as they were making those movies. Don't believe me? Well, read this and weep. "Mother, that will do," Mrs. Myers snapped. "The boy's been having enough problems at night without you adding to them." "Problems? What kind?" "Voices," Mrs. Myers finally blurted out. "He hears voices." The old woman cried, "I'm afraid to ask what these voices say." "They tell me to say I hate people." "That's how Michael put it when I asked him." So what? I hate people. It really isn't that scary. Oh, and young Michael Myers hearing a voice? Ring any bells? It was redundant here. So what made them think it could work in the movie? The house being empty meant no parents to bug her, no kid brother to burst in on her, and no baby sister that cries her eyes out. Which is a line I just made up. In fact, there's no hint whatsoever she even has a baby sister. Then again, the second movie wasn't made at the time, so Richards couldn't possibly have known that. Trick or treat! Oh yeah? Judy teased. And what if I don't give you any treats, huh? They shrugged, shuffled their feet, giggled nervously. Then one of them said, "We're gonna kill you!" Ooh, foreshadowing. A line said by the one character who never said a word! Not even when he was 6 years old. And even then, is this really what you want to hear Myers say? Didn't think so. He stood in the shadow of the tall hedgerow, looking and listening. Oh great, after 20 pages of painfully redundant scenes, now the movie starts! Apart from a dialogue or two that was never in the movie, the book follows the events quite well. Until... to look at him during the hearings before the magistrate was to see a handsome little lad in a neat tweed suit. His eyes were warm, his smile genuine, and when he spoke it was with an artless sincerity. More than one newspaper report described him as charming. Odd, considering that Loomis, his shrink, has said...
He hasn't spoken a word in 15 years.
I always assumed that Myers just stopped talking right after he killed his sister. In fact, I would even go as far as to say that because he never talked, people thought he was traumatized, and because of it, never considered him a serious threat. But by making him seem so charming, you're not making people like him more, you're portraying him as an obvious sociopath, so people would consider him a serious threat. Guess Thomas Harris took this book as an example on how not to portray a psychopath. You could, you know, Loomis said to him one afternoon. That's how much they fear you. If you were to ask an orderly for keys, ask a guard to turn his back at the appropriate moment, you could stroll out of here. Such is the power you exert over them. Isn't that true, Michael? Oh, is that how he escaped Smith's Grove? I mean, everyone who's seen the movie knows that Myers, in order to not be perceived as a serious threat, he must have somehow escaped the institution without actually harming anyone. How did he do it? According to this book, he simply asked. Even if you set aside the fact that...
He hasn't spoken a word in 15 years.
How many of you are buying that? That he could just walk out of there simply by asking others? I mean, for one thing, if the guards feared him that much, wouldn't that make them more vigilant? To say the least? So then we make it to the night of his escape.
A few hundred yards up on the right.
The only thing that ever bothers me is their gibberish. When they start raving on and on.
You haven't anything to worry about.
He's scarcely spoken a word in years. Oh, that's how you reconcile this line of dialogue, by implying that he does talk, just rarely. Somebody stabbed me now, I really need to compensate the pain. The man had dark red-stained lips and his eyes were rimmed in purple. The weird thing was, Tommy couldn't imagine that was the guy's own face. The rest I can sum up in a few words. So every now and then a reference is made to Myers' inner voice. There is a moment when only 10 or so minutes have passed and we're supposed to believe one full movie has been broadcast within those 10 minutes. There's the infamous moment wherein Myers is pretending to be a not very convincing ghost, and yet Richards doesn't bother to explain why. It's funny he feels the need to explain things that never needed to be explained, and yet either doesn't explain the things that do need to be explained, or only gives us some flimsy explanation. Mister, this is no joke. I mean, I've been trick-or-treated to death tonight. You don't know what death is, Loomis hissed. That was a line from the second movie! And that didn't even come about until a few years after this was published. I really hate to think that Carpenter or Hill have read the book and decided to add that line into their script. Then again, believe it or not, the first two movies were actually meant to be one movie. But for time restraints and budgetary reasons, they only turned the first part of the script into a movie. As such, I'm inclined to think that Curtis Richards actually got to read the original script and based this novelization on what he found there. But that would mean that some of the ideas that were in this novel, be it that cursed ghost and Myers simply asking to be let go, were also originally conceived by Carpenter and Hill. If so, then both of them obviously realized just in time that their movie worked better without those details. I only wish Richards were that smart. This was Dee, and enjoy Halloween while you still can. Sorry, but the day's not over yet, and already I dread the next holiday.